Welcome to today's episode of Soap Thing Thoughts. Joining me today is Matt Fox. Welcome to the Soap Thing Project, and thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ben.
So tell us about yourself, Matt Fox. Who are you? What do you do? How did you get to be in the wet shaving hobby? And to what degree are you currently involved with this hobby?
Yeah, so I am an engineer by trade. I've been working at the same place for the past almost 19 years, currently in research and development. I make components that go on rotating equipment, basically, big in the oil and gas industry, pharmaceutical companies, and my specific focus is pharmaceutical applications. But yeah, so how I came into this. Oh, and I guess I should state I'm married. I have two children, a daughter that's 16. So I've got a new driver in the house, which is fun. And my son is 13. So we're about to have two high schoolers pretty soon. So things are getting pretty busy around here in a different way, in a good way. Um, my daughter plays soccer. My son plays tennis. They're both in band. They're both pretty good at the instruments they play. And I guess, aside from wet shaving, I'm also a bowler. So that's my night out once a week. I go and do bowling league, mainly in the wintertime. I live in Michigan. So when it gets cold out, it's a good indoor activity to do. A lot of people go from bowling to golf, but I just go from bowling to taking care of the yard. So how I got into this, I kind of got tired of shaving with cartridges, the cost of cartridges, which is funny because everybody says, the cost of cartridges is one of the main drivers that gets them into wet shaving. But it was during the pandemic and I just kind of got curious about it and started looking up stuff. And it's to try and figure out what you want to start with razor wise can be a daunting task, right? You've got the Mercur 34C, the DE 89, and you could go 50-50 on that based on, people's recommendations. Excuse me, I hadn't found the community yet. So I just kind of made the decision to get a Mercur on my own. It was in August of 2020. And it wasn't that I was getting irritation with cartridge shaving or anything like that. In fact, I would just use water on my face and not any of the candy goo or anything like that, and just go to town and I'd probably shave once or twice a week. It was an irritating thing that I had to do. It was just a chore, and it only took one shave really to kind of get hooked on the process. And then I am the type of person that when I get involved in any type of a hobby or collecting, I kind of go all in. I did that with NASCAR diecast collectibles back in the day when I was watching NASCAR. I did that with Funko Pop figures, Star Wars action figures, things like that. So once I found that there were so many options out there, it was the saving money thing kind of went out the door pretty quickly. My first soap, so most of everything I bought the first go around, the Mercur and brush and soap, I got off of West Coast Shaving, and it was Sterling Barbershop, the Mercur 34C. I can't remember what blade it was that I got, and then just a West Coast Shaving branded brush. It was probably a Badger brush. And I think I got a bowl off of Amazon or something like that. And that's kind of how it all started. And then getting into the community itself, watching YouTube videos was kind of the first step that I took in learning how to execute this process. I don't remember how I got involved with Instagram, like the BBS live shows or Canadian Mafia show. But I think it's just a natural progression if you want to jump into the hobby, or you want to delve into the hobby deeper. Obviously, Facebook groups. I never got into any of the Reddits or Badger and Blade or anything like that. It was mainly Facebook and Instagram. And then I started to realize there were all these, um, modern day razors that really caught my eye. Being an engineer, shiny things kind of catch my eye. Well designed things catch my eye. So um, can't remember the next razor that I bought, but I have a few now, like Carve Shaving, Overlander Bison, Blackbird Titanium, the Aylesworth razors. I really like those a lot. So I've moved on from the Merkur. Obviously, I prefer a little bit more efficient razors. Slight blade feel. I don't need anything crazy. But I've gone from something that I dreaded doing and only did once or twice a week to I shave every day and feel like I'm missing out if I don't get to shave that day. So yeah, you could say I'm pretty well versed in the hobby now. I'm all in.
So you do then a lot of Instagram lives. That's how you became kind of well known in this hobby, is through Instagram lives.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So mainly through BBS Live. I don't get a chance to join Canadian Mafia Show as much as I'd like, but I do a lot of the BBS Live. I do yesterday morning. This is Sunday, so Saturday morning I did a shave with the razor company with a few of the guys.
That's cool. So let's unpack a few things that you said. It's fascinating how so many of us will get into this thinking, oh, we're gonna save money. And then yeah, look what happens to that. We end up having 25 razors or more, 50 to 100, 150 soaps, and who knows how many brushes. One of the things that I guess I'm somewhat thankful for is I replaced a couple of different hobbies with this one. So it isn't necessarily digging that much more into my financial state. It's just, I think a lot of people, when they get into this, they sort of set something else aside and do this instead for however long they choose to do it. And that's just kind of the nature of the wet shaving hobby, if you will. Uh, when I got into this, I was kind of the same way. I didn't necessarily have any issues shaving with cartridge razors. I wanted to shave with something that was cheaper and more involving, and having to lather up with a brush and put it on your face and shave with multiple passes. That just kind of worked for, I guess, my particular thought process was, it's like it was more interesting and more enjoyable to just kind of take a little bit of extra time, decompress, and it's almost like thought time. Like whenever I'm not on camera doing shaves, I'm just sitting there thinking about life, and I'm one of those people that I have to be in motion in order to get good thoughts to come out or get good ideas, and so I'd have to be moving around the house, going for a walk or a run, or messing around with things. And so shaving kind of just fits into that. For the topic that I have chosen today, we're going to talk about the Sniff-O-Meter. For those of you who have been watching a lot of my videos, you know that whenever we do a scent, whenever I smell the shaving soap and we do a scent strength measurement, there's a little Sniff-O-Meter thing that'll go kind of at the bottom of the screen. So we're going to talk about scent strength. There are 5 categories of the Sniff-O-Meter that I use in my videos, and we can talk about it from the standpoint of, so there's one through 5. One is like, let's just go ahead and start. So a scent strength of 1 out of 5, and I'm using anecdotal numbers here, so you'll just have to take it with a grain of salt.
Sure.
But in my experience, because I've been doing this since 2017, a scent strength of 1 out of 5 represents about 5% of all shaving soaps. And it's usually an accident. And when we're talking about 1 out of 5, it's a shaving soap that is supposed to be fragrant, but it is doing so quite badly.
Mhm.
So it's one of those where I'm just going to take a generic shaving soap. Here's a Wet the Face Salty Sea Air. So 1 out of 5 is one of those, and this is not a 1 out of 5, by the way, but a 1 out of 5 is something where you really got to get your nose up in there and really pay attention and take slow, methodical sniffs because it's hard to really get the fragrance out of it. Do you have any experience with shaving soaps that are like that, where it was just like, whoa, where'd it go?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a few within my journey that you open it and kind of all you get's that base smell, right? And like you said, you really have to get in there and hunt for the notes. And I don't have a highly refined nose, I'd say. I can't pick out little nuances. They have to be pretty obvious to me. So for me to, I like strong scents, but I like well blended scents. But yeah, there's definitely been some ones on on my Sniff-O-Meter, if you will. And I tend to not judge strength based off of the soap tub because I'm a soap and splash set type of person. So where I get frustrated is when you get a soap and a scent and a splash that you have to hunt for, or that maybe my particular nose I go nose blind to really quick, and I have a low tolerance for something like that. But yeah, I can see where there are some. I don't want to call out brands because there's obviously some really fantastic artisans within this community that do a good job with their blendings and such, and make up for it on my side in the aftershave. But definitely, there's some on the one side for me.
Right. So about that, if you're not gonna name drop, then I won't either. I have some specifics off the top of my head, but in this case, I think I'll just go ahead and say that there are entire brands that I have experienced that, as long as we're going to talk negatively, that I got multiple soaps in a row where you smelled it and it was just like, I thought this was supposed to have a smell. Like, where did it go? And there's a two brands specifically that I got multiple soaps in a row. Like I'm talking 3 or 4 of them, uh, where there was supposed to be a scent and it was just not there, or it was practically gone when I got it. And I'll just say if you've noticed that there are certain brands that have either neither been seen on my that have either never been seen on my channel or have been seen very, very rarely, there's probably a reason for that. I'll just leave it at that. As we get into higher sin strengths, I think we can freely talk about brands as far as like what we notice, but I think you're onto something in that we don't necessarily want to trash brands because it could have been a bad batch. Like you just
Sure.
don't know. So, uh, but yeah, 1 out of 5 is seems to be pretty rare for me in my personal experience. Like I said, 5% of all shaving soaps that I experienced were a 1 out of 5, and it was either an accident or it was a shaving soap that was explicitly designed to be very forgiving to people with sensitive skin. And
Hmm.
part of being forgiving to skin sensitivities is you have to have low fragrance because people's skin will react to high amounts of fragrance oils.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are I have a brand in mind that is generally a one, but I've also gotten scents from this brand that are they're more like a four. So it's interesting. I don't know if it's I know that soap bases carry scent differently than than splash bases. But I don't know if that necessarily translates to strength versus note nuances.
You do have a good point. Some scent notes are stronger smelling than others, even in the same amount. So, like for example, citrus notes will tend to smell more pronounced, I guess you could say, than maybe woody notes. And that's not necessarily having to do with, the woody scent used less scent oils. It's just some scents are just a more in your face kind of scent character. Moving on to a scent strength of 2 out of 5. So this one I put as being about 20% of all shaving soaps that I have experienced. And this is going to be the lowest point that I would consider acceptable. 1 out of 5 is a problem for me. Like that's like, come on. Like if I wanted a soap with a scent strength that's that low, I would have just bought unscented.
Sure.
But a 2 out of 5 is what I would consider good enough, but it could be better. What I've noticed is just to name a few, a lot of WSP is in this category. A lot of Zingari Man is in this category. And again, this is not a bad thing. It's just, like I said, the lowest acceptable baseline. And one of the things I noticed is that there's usually there's usually specific brands where an overwhelming majority of their lineup is 2 out of 5, basically on purpose. That's just because that's how they choose to do most, if not all of their products. What are your thoughts on that?
So I've never tried any WSP. I've definitely tried some Zingari, and I've had some that are lower scent off the puck. I've had some that are lower scent on the splash. I feel like with Heather's products, you have to let them, especially from the splash. Initially, since they're not alcohol based, they have to kind of fester on your skin for a bit before they reveal themselves. But it's I have a hard time thinking of like what a 2 is versus a 1. I get what you're saying as far as your scale goes, but if I could come up with an example, so it's interesting to me. Like, so you got PAA that has pretty much most of their product lines are pretty strongly scented, but then you get a more subtle scented option like Speakeasy, or not. Is it Speakeasy? Yeah, Speakeasy, I think it is. Where I would say that's probably about a 2 for me as far as scent strength goes. And that's even true with the aftershave, which, as we all know, those are typically in your face as well. I can understand also that being like the minimum threshold. Like, you're absolutely right. If it's going to smell lighter than that, then I might as well just get an unscented and just buy a whole bunch of different splashes from you, or go with your fragrance collection, right?
Right. So, in closing out of this one, so 20% for a 2 out of 5. I think 20% of all shaving soap scents that I have experienced in my time doing this. And like I said, this is something that the problem is it's so subjective, because somebody's probably going to come in here and say, well, I think WSP smells great. It's like, way higher on their, scent strength measurements than it is for me. All I know is what I've experienced. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think, everybody's nose is a little bit different. Everybody's, we'll say, even their brand loyalty can come into play here too, and what experience they're trying to get out of this hobby as well.
Okay, moving on to a 3 out of 5 for scent strength. Again, in my experience, about 40% of all shaving soaps, excuse me, 40% of all shaving soaps that I've experienced are a 3 out of 5, which is a clear plurality. I was looking for the right word. A clear plurality uh, of shaving soaps are 3 out of 5. And almost every artisan, I think, has a shaving soap in this scent category, or in your case, an aftershave splash in this category, where it is plenty of scent. Like it's not imposing, it's not like potently fragrant, but it is plenty enough to smell without having to try to smell. Some particular brands who do a lot of this, a lot of 3 out of 5, is like Sterling, Shannon soaps, a fair amount of PAA is like this, in my personal opinion. Um, just like your run of the mill shaving soaps, Mike's Natural is a lot of 3 out of 5 going on with that brand. What are your thoughts on 3 out of 5?
So I think 3 out of 5 is probably where most artisans are aiming to get with their, and I could be wrong there, but 3 out of 5 seems like a pretty safe space to live in. It's enough to where you open the tub, you get what they're trying to get across with the scent. And I agree with you. Sterling is really good at this. Uh, Shannon's PAA kind of goes all over the board with theirs, right? But I think that 3 out of 5 is a good area to aim. Most people are going to be happy with 3 out of 5 scent strength. As far as when I'm using the soap during my shave, most scents, even the strong scents, I tend to not smell necessarily all the way through the shave. Definitely get a punch of that when you first put it on your face. But I don't, that's where I look for that longevity in the splash. I don't want to stray from your topic here too much, but yeah, I'm perfectly happy with the 3 out of 5 in products that I purchase.
Let's take a slight detour for a moment before we move on. So you've mentioned a couple times that you care necessarily more about the scent strength and longevity of an aftershave than you do about a shaving soap. I personally have not experienced that many aftershaves that were low scent. Like most of them that I have used are plenty of scent strength, and some of them last on your skin a long time. To be
Mhm.
honest with you, like I'm getting a good 3 hours of that on my face before I start to not smell it. Uh, so just on the merits of your particular preference, I would say that if you're trying to get a scent to stick with you for a longer period of time, that's where you'd want to get it from, is your aftershave, or even get one of their
Sure.
fragrances. When you're in the bathroom is when the scent is, I guess, meant for you to pay the most attention to it, is the best way to put it. And so when I'm in the bathroom shaving with the shaving soap is when I am going to pay the closest attention to what I'm smelling. That's when I'm going to deliberately stand there and take in all the nuances and really process the metaphorical story that they're trying to tell me.
So in that sense, I think my nose goes pretty blind to the scent with most soaps pretty quickly after I lather it. I can smell it off the tub. I can smell it while I'm lathering. I can smell it when I put it to the face, but then, it's not strongly. It's funny because it's right there under your nose. It's not ever present with me throughout the shave, but there have been times where my wife walks into the bathroom and she's like, "Oh, it smells really good in here," and I can't smell it as strong anymore, right?
it does sound like you might be somebody who is predisposed to go anosmic to things. Like you tend to go nose blind. Would that be safe to assume?
Yeah, not on everything. You know, so I tend to wear my splash pretty heavy. I make sure it gets on my clothes so that I can smell it and enjoy it. So that's probably a fair assessment.
Okay. Um, Moving on to 4 out of 5. Sense strength of 4 out of 5. In my experience, that goes back to about 20% of all shaving soap scents. So with 4 out of 5, we're starting to get into stronger than it needs to be. I think a 4 out of 5, your reaction is going to be, this is stronger than it needs to be, but it's not like overbearing. So this is where you're going to notice kind of a bottlenecking of brands. So like Hags have a great shave. Hags, A&E, PAA, a lot of Night Watch, which is a newer brand, is like 4 out of 5. So uh 4 out of 5 is one of those things also where you're probably going to want to start being careful if you have skin sensitivities, because 4 out of 5 is, while it's not like through the roof and up into the sky, it's still quite a lot of sense strength. And that's where I've noticed a lot of people starting to say, I couldn't use this because it gave me a burn. So, what are your thoughts on 4 out of 5? Do you have any scents that are worthy of note for 4 out of 5?
Yeah, so I have, in fact, just before this, I shaved with an A&E, one of their new creams that's scented after Drakkar. And we talked about me going nose blind or using your big word as I'm gonna butcher it as Nas. I'm not gonna try.
Anosmic.
Anosmic. Thank you. I have heard that word before, so um, that definitely I would say lives in that 4 out of 5 realm, and that's one of the ones that I did experience throughout the shave. I'm very fortunate to not have sensitive skin to where I can use. There's one scent note that I cannot use that I've found so far, and that's cherry.
Interesting.
I felt a burn with Annie's cherry pie, and I contacted Peter about it. He said, that's interesting. Could be the lanolin. We do a lot of testers, blah blah blah. And I just kind of wrote it off. It would only burn in the moment, and it'd be done. And then I didn't experience it again until I used Highland Springs Soap Company's Found Cherry, and it was the exact same thing. I'm like, oh, well, now we know what it is. So that's the only scent note that's really I'm sensitive to. So I don't mind 4 out of 5. For my experience, I prefer to be 4 out of 5. That's why I like PA. That's why I like A&E. So it adds to my enjoyment. And there are a few that I can smell throughout the shave, and today was one of them.
Let's unpack some of that because you made a couple good points. As long as we're going to talk about skin sensitivities, the one that I tend to get like a skin reaction to, and that won't even necessarily stop me from using it, but if I'm going to get a burn, it's usually going to be from heavily scented gourmand scents. So if it has a lot of like caramel or just like boozy sweetness, I remember 345 Soap Company Night Shift kind of gave me a burn, and that's a really heavy donut scent. I still use it and I still have it, so I feel comfortable talking about it, but it does give me a little bit of a burn. A lot of coffee scents will give me a little bit of a skin burn. So I got to be in the mood for it, but it does do that. Everybody's got their interesting things that give them skin reactions. It's really weird. Well, I guess weird isn't the right word, but it's interesting how different people react to different things. Please tell me I am not the only one who noticed that whenever you get a cherry aftershave, if it's got alcohol in it, it basically turns into Robitussin.
So the 2 cents that I utilized with cherry, to me they didn't smell like Robitussin because they were blended with other things.
Oh, okay.
Cherry pie you could maybe argue that it was close to that, and I should state that if it didn't give me a skin reaction, it just gave me that burn, right? So my face didn't get red. I didn't break out in anything. So I'd be in the same camp as you, where if I wanted to really use it, then am I in the mood for that day? It's almost like, I don't drink sour beers every day, but I have to be in the right mood if I'm going to do that, right?
Right. It makes perfect sense. So yeah, 4 out of 5, 20% of all shaving soap scents. If you've noticed something different, if your percentages are way different than mine, go ahead and put it in the comment section of the video because I'd be curious to see what you're experiencing out there. Let's go to the last one. 5 out of 5 on the Sniff-O-Meter. This, according to my notes, represents 15% of all shaving soap scents. So let's describe the character of 5 out of 5. It is potent. Like we're talking scents that you can smell it like all the way out here. So it just like radiates and it just blasts you in the face the moment you open the jar. Like there's just no escaping it. It is way stronger than it needs to be, and too much of it can sometimes give you a headache. It can cause you to go nose blind because it's just way too much. This category of scents, there's a lot of A&E, a lot of PAA, a lot of chiseled face, which I've noticed lately. I'm trying to think of other brands that are just crazy into the 5 out of 5 category. If you can think of any off the top of your head, go ahead and put it in the comment section. Go ahead.
Where would you put Spearhead? Sea Spice Lime. Is that live in a 4 or a 5 for you?
Sea Spice Lime. That is a 4. Now, Seaforth Spiced, in my opinion, is a 5.
Okay.
The most recent one I got from Spearhead, Seaforth, is Florida, France, which I love. It's an amazing barbershop scent. That is another 4 out of 5. So
okay.
I think most people know a 5 out of 5, or if you're going to scale it up, an 8 or 9 to 10 out of 10 when they see it. It's kind of hard to ignore because there's actually a fair bit of a leap from 4 to 5 out of 5. Like 5 out of 5 is just whoa kind of scent strength, where it's so strong it's almost not fun anymore. Almost. So what are your personal experiences with scents of that nature?
I don't know that I've used a lot that are 5 out of 5. I personally would put like a Sea Spice Lime in that category. I haven't smelled spiced, but I like strongly scented stuff. So I'm probably the exception to your rule here. So what from PA would you put into that category? Are you talking like Atomic Bay Rum then?
So the one that comes to mind most immediately is Aloha Smackdown, which is their Hawaiian Punch scent. That is a good example of holy crap, 5 out of 5. And some of that could be it is that strong, or it could be some of it could be just really bold and imposing scent notes because there's a lot of citrus and fruits in there, and that they tend to go that direction. What from A&E is a good strong 5 out of 5? I got to think about that one for a minute. Probably SoCal Hipster
Okay. We're
Is
back in the citrus and fruity type of
yeah, there seems to
category,
be a
right?
theme going here.
Well,
Um,
do you think that might be because those are top notes, so they come across strong from the get-go and then fade away quickly? Nah, don't don't get me wrong. I know that, Aloha Smackdown is strong all the way through when you put on the splash. But are we, as artisans, are they trying to compensate for the citrus being a top note?
I don't know. Because another example of 5 out of 5 is Wet the Face, the Perfect Cup. So there are a handful of coffee scents that are just wild 5 out of 5. I'm gonna have to say probably not, because I don't think it's the fact that they're top notes, because every shaving soap has top end notes, even if they're not citrus notes.
Sure.
So like for example, a lot of fougères have lavender and geranium towards the top, and some of them are 5 out of 5, and some of them are not. So I think
Hmm.
yes, citrus notes are predisposed to have bold scent strength, but is it the be all end all? Not to me. I don't
Right.
think so, because I've had other shaving soaps that are 5 out of 5 that are not fruity or citrusy. Uh,
And it's not really a fair question because it's not up to you and I to speak for the artisans here, right?
right. So we're just spitballing. That's what this show is all about. Uh, so that is the scent strength category that I have been using for a long time, 1 through 5 scent strength, and that's kind of my attitude towards it. And so whenever you've seen me do a video historically, or maybe you'll see one in the future where I use that scent strength measurement, that's kind of the thought process I'm going with.
Interesting. And it's funny you said, 1 and 2. One, you might as well go with an unscented. Two is about your bare minimum. And I find my tolerance for those soaps is I don't keep them around.
2 out of 5 you don't keep around?
Typically, no. I have to really like the scent.
I think I think I would agree with that. Uh, if it's going to be a 2 out of 5, it has to be among my favorite scent styles to have any kind of chance. So that is what it is. That's a good point that you made, though. A lot of those lower scent strength ones, at least for you and me, we'll tend to push them out the door if they're not quite doing it for us.
Right.
Um, let's move to a final topic before we get out of here. What are let's do this. I'm thinking of this just off the top of my head. Pick 2 of the best scents you've ever smelled,
Oh my gosh.
and why they are at the top of your list.
Wow. Well, I everybody would call me out if I didn't say CAD or you could say YSL Reeve Gauche, right? Or Vintage Barbershop, or sorry, Barbasol. I don't know what it is about that scent. It just is something that I find really pleasing. Which is interesting. Is like some of them you get a really heavy anise on the top end of it, but which is not a scent note that's in my wheelhouse at all. But it's the maybe it's the fact that it's something that I can smell on me all day long. So it just it's one of those scents that I can puff my chest out a little more and walk with a little more confidence that day or whatever. But there's just something within the whole DNA of that scent composition that really I don't know, it just makes me happy. um, so yeah, that's definitely one. To call it a second one, geez. Um, it, there's a couple of leathery scents out there that I think are really nice because of the other things that they're blended with. And one of them is McDuff's American Vintage. that is done in collaboration with the Raisin Company. It's listed as a tobacco scent that I get a lot more leather from, but I think that tobacco that's blended with it, along with the other notes, tames down the leather enough to where it's not like like an animalistic type of leather. And also Shannon's Indigo Oud does that for me as well.
Indigo Oud is good stuff. I love that scent.
Really? Yeah.
If you like leather, have you considered a Tom Ford ombre leather type of scent?
Yeah. So the PAA Danailed Foil 50, as well as Luther's the Amigos soap done for the Shave Migos, are both really good ombre leather scents to me. And I kind of like so it's a soft leather, and I like the sweetness that's up front from, it's not cloyingly sweet, but it's enough to, like I said, bring down that animalistic, that raw leather smell that you get.
Right. I think ombre leather is mostly leather and jasmine sambac, which is an interesting note combination that just for some reason just works. For me, I luckily had more time to think about it. Shame on me for doing that to you. But one of them is Zingari Man Bon Monsieur,
Mm,
because for a couple of years, several years actually, I have been on a kick of 80s fragrances. Like everything from Sung Om to Quorum to Dracar Noir to Chanel Antaeus. Uh, and I think Bon Monsieur is like, it's an original scent, but what it resembles more closely, if I had to pick something, is Quorum by Antonio Puig. And it's just this really oak mossy kind of shaving cream barber shop sort of thing. They don't make shaving soap scents like they used to. Like I've spoken about this before, but I think the 80s was kind of the the beginning of the end of daring originality in fragrances. I think it finally fizzled out in the late 90s, but in the 80s, you could see things starting to change. Uh,
mm,
and the other one is sadly discontinued. Hopefully, they'll bring it back for another round and I can get a couple pucks of it. But it's PAA DAB,
mm,
which is a Brill cream scent.
yeah.
And it's got this very not as feminine as you might think, kind of hair salon sort of scent to it.
Yeah.
And that one struck me as just a very compelling and interesting scent in a way that I didn't expect. If in fact, if I were going to stretch this out and pick many more shaving soaps, which I might do in a future video, some of the greatest scents I've ever smelled, it might not be because they're necessarily that great, but it might have a lot to do with just how strikingly surprised I was by what I smelled. Like it was just very unexpectedly positive, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I'm with you on those, like the 80s stuff or the vintage stuff. I tend to gravitate towards some of that stuff, like CAD. Clubman or a club guy from PAA. The Brill cream is oddly satisfying, even though it's after, it's like a hair cream or hair pomade. Um, the vintage Fabergé Brut has been one that I've so I got that one from A&E. They just came out with the creams on that. Another one that's kind of nostalgic for me is Polo Green, the dupes that come out for that, because my dad wore it.
Right.
Um, yeah, so and that's back in that era, the 70s and the 80s. 70s, not musky 70s, which, I guess they had their time, but they're just not something that I necessarily gravitate to, like the high karates and things like that.
Yeah, they did have their time. I mean, I guess for me, the reason why they're so intriguing is because it seems like modern sense, at least for the past like 15, 20 years, has been a lot of just more of the same. Like once Blue
Mhm.
to Chanel came out, that's kind of the direction that everybody went in. And so everything was this Ambroxan bomb kind of woody, bubblegummy, sweet, mass pleasing sort of thing. And it was just like, this is all too much of the same crap. And so that's when I kind of shot backwards in time, so to speak, to just anything that was not that.
Yeah, something that had an identity.
Something that had an identity. Yeah, exactly. I love the way you put that. Okay, we are coming up on time to bring the video to a close. I'm going to ask you the same thing I ask everybody else. If you had to give a piece of advice to both new shavers and experienced shavers, what have you learned that you can pass on to them?
So with the new shavers, I'd say um, don't throw out a generic question on a Facebook group or on a like a Reddit thread or something like that, asking what's your favorite X, because you're going to get 20 different answers and you're not going to get any further than when you started. Same thing with, what razor should I start off with? Somebody that I work with, he was probably the only person I've known that actually that I know, that I live close to, that said that they were interested in wet shaving, and they were asking me about, what should I get for a razor? I'm looking at the Merkur 34C, and I said, well, what's your budget? And he said that he was willing to spend up to $100, and I said, well, for that amount of money, I would suggest, and I suggested a Cargo Overlander, because um, it's going to last. It's I'd say more efficient than a Merkur 34C. Now that can be subjected to, because depending on what blade you're using, depending on how well versed your technique is. But I just felt that that was a better use of his money, and he went with it, and he liked it. So just be careful as a new wet shaver what questions you're asking, and grab onto one person or a couple people that you've engaged with in the community and ask them directly what their experiences have been. And
Right.
then as far as, well, I'm sorry, did you want to expand upon that at all before I went on to the next topic?
Yeah, I was gonna wait till the end, but I'll go ahead and
Okay.
put something in there just now. You do have a very good point that I think very few people have the guts to say, which is, don't just ask generic questions. You need to be more specific in your questioning. Like, this is what happens when I shave with this tool. What do you think would make that stop happening? Would at least be a better question,
Yeah.
uh, especially in terms of razors, because there are so darn many of them that you're going to need to be more exact in your questioning in order to dial it in to exactly what you need. That's why I it's the damnedest thing. I have just sold my sixth Rockwell 6S
I saw that in
because
your video.
because because every single time I get it, somebody comes along who wants to learn how to wet shave, and that just seems to be the razor that works. And so they'll make me an offer I can't refuse. And once again, I have no Rockwell success in my life. Uh,
Right.
but yeah, be more exact in your questioning, and I think you'll get better results. So, what do you have for experienced shavers?
For experienced shavers, I would say we need to be careful with our inputting our preferences into advice that we give. Rather, lean into our experiences more. Don't deal in absolutes. Don't tell somebody that they're wrong because they're because they're experiencing something with a piece of hardware that you didn't experience. Don't tell somebody they're wrong because they smell a scent note that you don't smell. It's one of the most nerve-wracking things I have when somebody says, well, what do you think of this soap? And knowing that my senses aren't as in tune as some other people, or I don't have the library of fragrances like even you were talking about. I'm more hesitant to give out my review on it or my thoughts on it because I don't want to be told I'm wrong. So I think that's something as experienced people in this hobby we need to be careful with and listen to what somebody has to say and kind of take a step back and see it from their point of view.
Right. Yeah, you do make another good point. I think it's human nature to tend to think what we have experienced is what is objectively. Like we tend to think that what we have experienced is just the way that it is. And there have been times in my hobby where I fell into that trap. And today I try to be more open-minded and just say, look, all I can tell you is what I've experienced, and this is what I've experienced. Like for example, Yates razors. There was a time where I thought Yates was going out of my life because it was just not fitting my shaving style. And now the Yates America razor is probably the razor I'm going to use forever because it's working. And I have decided that what has caused me to have a lot of shaving problems is using this razor and then this one and then this one and then that one. And you don't have a chance to get something dialed in.
Yeah. 100% agree. That's the one of the banes of this hobby is the variety that we have and the variety that we collect, right? You hit the nail on the head with that. You don't give yourself the time to dial in that shave, so you blame the hardware when oftentimes I know when I have a bad shave, it's operator error.
Oh, it's a blessing and a curse. So, Matt Fox, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. It's been a great time talking to you. I will go ahead and put all of Matt Fox's information in the description of this video so you can find him rather easily. I want to thank everybody for watching, and I want to thank you, Matt Fox, for coming on the project and taking time out of your day to do this.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I appreciate you inviting me.
Thanks for coming on. It's been a blast. Questions, comments, everybody put those in the comments section of the video. Otherwise, until next time, this is Soap Thing telling you, shave like you mean it. Thanks for watching.